I started having contractions at 35 weeks, very close together, so I went to the hospital. We got to the hospital just before 1 a.m. We got up to the labor and delivery floor and they immediately got me into a room. My contractions were coming stronger and closer together. At this point, they were about 1 to 2 minutes apart. They got me hooked up to the monitors and they immediately checked me. At this point, I was 3 centimeters dilated. So I'm here, 3.5 centimeters dilated, 80% effaced. I am 35 weeks today. I'm hoping that we don't have to have NICU time. Very nervous. Because I was 35 weeks, they didn't stop my labor immediately. It was just a wait and see. Contractions are 2 minutes apart. After being on the monitors for an hour, I decided to get into the bathtub. It was actually written into my birth plan that this is where I was going to spend most of my labor at. The nurse came and got me an hour later and wanted to check me again.
We're ready for it.
My contractions hit me like a lightning bolt the second I got out of the tub. I was now 4 centimeters dilated. Because I was still dilating, they wanted to give me steroid shots for the baby's lungs. They also gave me a pill to stop the contractions, but it didn't work. After spending some time on the ball, I decided to get back into the bath and just work through my contractions. 10 minutes later, my nurse came in and wanted to check me again.
How can I help you?
Hi, I'm ready to be checked.
Okay, they're on their way in.
Thank you. There is a big jump in time here, but that's because my phone died and I was able to charge it. I was checked one more time before this and I was 5 centimeters dilated. I had to make the really hard decision whether to stop my contractions and try to settle down or whether to get them going. So I decided to get them going and I sat on what is called the dilation station. I was checked again at 10 a.m. and I was still 5 centimeters dilated. At 10:30 a.m., my contractions decided to space out. I was still 5 centimeters dilated. At 1 o'clock, I was still 5 centimeters, so they decided to discharge me. And I came back the next day for a steroid shot. I was now on bed rest, and shockingly, it didn't really work because I went to the hospital 2 more times. 2 days after my first admission, I woke up with contractions. I took a pill to try and stop the contractions, but it didn't work. I took the pill a half hour ago. Still hasn't done anything. My contractions are still coming very regularly, very painful, especially my back. So I took the pill 2 hours ago, still having very consistent contractions. My husband came home from work and we immediately headed to the hospital. While I was walking and having contractions, I could feel exactly how dilated I was. We got up to the labor and delivery floor and they immediately got us into a room. And as per usual, I got into a gown. Here we are. My contractions were coming every 1 to 2 minutes. So I'm here. I was checked and I'm still 5 centimeters, so I haven't dilated anymore. My contractions are about 1 to 2 minutes apart. Some are like 3, but yeah. And the baby is kicking the monitor. Contractions were picking up in intenseness and I had a feeling we would have a baby this day. My amazing nurse, she's literally the sweetest, gave me a popsicle to eat and it literally tasted amazing. After finishing that popsicle, I decided to get up and move around. And also, right about right here, my husband smacks my butt. Gotta love that man. It is now 5 o'clock and contractions are still every 1 to 2 minutes. And you can hear my sweet baby's heartbeat right here. At 6 o'clock, I got back into the bed, and at 7 o'clock, I got into the bath. It was actually written into my birth plan that I wanted to be in the bath for most of it. And at this time, my contractions started to space out, and I actually started crying because I'm exhausted. At this point, I had had nearly 24 hours of contractions. My baby was moving like crazy, and she wouldn't stay on the monitors. At 8:30, my contractions were still coming about every 10 minutes, but they had spaced out, and so they decided to discharge me. I was beyond exhausted at this point. The entire next week, I still had contractions, but I didn't go in. I am now 36 weeks and 6 days. I started timing contractions at 10 p.m. We left at 11 and got there at midnight. The walk into the hospital felt very, very familiar, almost like I have done it 3 times at this point. I was convinced that we would have a baby this day. We went up to the labor and delivery floor and they got us into a room.
Are you ready for your nurse?
Yes.
Okay, she'll just be in just a minute, okay?
Thank you. My contractions were very consistent and they were coming about every 1 to 2 minutes again. I just got checked. I am 5.5 centimeters, so hoping 3rd time's the charm, please. At 1 o'clock in the morning, my nurse came in and took the monitors off me and said that I could move around, so I went into the bath. If you've seen my other 2 parts, then you know that this is where I wanted to spend most of my labor at anyway. It felt amazing. In the bath. These contractions are strong. My contractions were definitely a 5 on the pain scale, and I honestly felt like my water could break at any minute. This fan was a godsend. I got out of the bath and started working my way through my contractions on the birthing ball. My contractions were still very painful, but they were starting to space out at this point, and at this point is when this labor took a turn. I knew in my gut at this point that this day was not going to be the day that I had my baby, and I just started walking around. I was actually really sad. I did eventually have my baby 1 week later. Come with me to deliver our 3rd baby at 37 weeks and 6 days. I started timing contractions around 8:20 p.m. and because our hospital is an hour away, I decided to head to the hospital immediately. My contractions were getting stronger and closer together. We had so many views of fireworks since it was the 4th of July. We pulled into our hospital exactly at 10 p.m. I'm shaky. Then it was time for the long walk from the parking garage to the hospital. Oh, I have to pee so bad. We finally made it, but not before we got stuck at the doors to the labor and delivery floor. We were finally buzzed in and they got me into a labor and delivery room. Oh, just look at my cute hubby here. He is my absolute rock. I couldn't have gotten through this birth without him. It's baby time. I am 6 centimeters dilated. I am in active labor. It's exciting. After an hour of answering all the questions to get checked in, I got into the tub and man, did it feel good. Did notice that my contractions were slowing down, so I decided to get out after about 15 minutes and get on the ball. After being on the ball for about 10 minutes, they decided to put the monitors back on me. For the next hour, I was on the monitors working through my contractions by the hospital bed. 1 o'clock rolls around, my nurse checks me, I'm still 6 centimeters, so I ask her to get the peanut ball. Still 6 centimeters dilated, so hoping some progress is done. 10 minutes later, my midwife comes in and breaks my water. I am now 9 centimeters dilated. My contractions are now back to back, which means I didn't have a break between. At this time, I decided to get back into the bath just to see if it helps. I got out of the bath about a contraction later, and I worked my way through my contractions at the end of the hospital bed. At this point, I was squatting and swaying, just trying to get the baby down into the right position. I decided to get back onto the bed and start pushing on my side. I know it looks like I'm on my back, but I'm actually on my side here. After about 4 minutes of pushing, we realized that I am not fully dilated from all of the pain that I'm having, so we decided to wait a little bit longer. I worked through a few contractions on my own, and then we decided to get me back onto my side to see if we can get that cervical lip out of the way. That position hurt enormously, so I decided to get back onto my hands and knees. It only took 4 minutes of contractions on my hands and knees to realize I needed to push. At 2:52 a.m. I start pushing, and she was born 4 minutes later at 2:56 a.m. Nothing beats this moment of meeting your baby for the very first time.
Look at this beautiful. Oh my gosh, look at that beautiful thing.